In this tutorial, we're going to look at how to perform the side plank correctly. Now, we're going to look at two parts, which is going to be the teaching points, and then we're going to start talking about some common mistakes. But we're going to do those kind of intermingled with each other, because when I go through the correct teaching points, the common mistakes will kind of come out at the same time. Before we get into that, just quickly want to mention, if you look down in the description below, you'll see a link there, and that goes through to my How to Build Core Strength and Stability 12-week program. Now, this program isn't just a workout, it's not just a 12-week workout program. There are workshops on how to perform exercises like the side plank and others, and how to perform them correctly with the correct teaching points, the common mistakes, the how to progress and regress, so how to make it easier and harder, and all those different bits and pieces involved in that as well. So it's not just about doing the exercise, it's about getting the exercise right, using the correct techniques so you can optimize and strengthen and stabilize your core as best as you possibly can. So how do we perform the side plank correctly? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to work basically from the top all the way down the body. So I'll go through the teaching points and the common mistakes from the top, and then just work my way down the body as we go. So what we want to do first, with regards to, again, the top, is we want our head in line. What we also want to do is have our elbow directly below our shoulder. So what this starts to look like is I'm just going to start with a half side plank, and then I'll move into a full side plank as I get down there. So head needs to stay in line. So as I come up, I want to look like I'm essentially stood up, but on my side. So I want my head to be in the same position. I don't want it to be here. I don't want it to be here. I don't want it to be here. And I don't want it to be here. I want it to be in the middle. The other thing that I want is I want the elbow to be directly below the shoulder. What that will do, that will help minimize the amount of work going through the shoulder. If I go here, I've got to work harder on my shoulder to hold this position. If I go here, again, I'm a little bit more unstable, so I need to find that point at which the elbow goes directly below the shoulder. So those are points number one. So we need to get that right. Head position, shoulder position. What we then need, which again is still the shoulders, is we need the shoulders stacked. Now what that basically means is if I come sort of front on, we want shoulders directly on top of each other. So essentially we want a straight line from elbow through the bottom shoulder, the top shoulder. And one thing I do get some people to do is put an arm straight up in the air, because then you'll find out whether it's you're in a straight line or not. Because what will happen is if you find people that are slightly like this and they put their arm up, they'll be like that. Or they won't be able to get their arm up and there'll be a big stretch. So if we come into this position, it should be a nice, natural, easy position to go into. So far, we've got the head position, we've got the elbow and shoulder position, and then we've got the shoulders stacked. If we move down a little bit further, we'll look at the spine. Now, with regards to the spine, we want that to be in a nice neutral position, and we don't want it to be bent to the side or bent to the other side. So what that basically means is I'll start off front on. So basically we're in this position, and then so what I would do is I would find in this half plank position, my hips on the floor, I would find that neutral posture. But as you can see, I've got a slight hinge at the hip. So what I would be doing is going from this position, neutral, and then straight up. So what I'm not doing is I'm not in this position, I've then got a bent spine. So if I spin round, so if I'm straight like that, I've now got a bent spine and I'm sort of kicked up like that. What I've got is this position here, so I can now neutralise the spine and then come up. So that would be a nice, easy start position. And you can then do that from the full plank position as well, because you would just come into this position. You can see I've got bent knee, bent hip, and I can then come and up. Or you might be able to go from, say, this position and up and then out. But you just might find the changing of the feet a little bit more awkward. So essentially what we're looking for from the spine is nice neutral posture throughout, You can use the back of the hand like I did, and then just move the hips sort of up and forward into that position from a slight hip hinge. Now, the other part to this is just like with the shoulders, we want the hips stacked on top of each other. So again, if we look from the top down, again, what we don't want is we don't want the hips sort of tilted forward. Now, if you've got your knees on top of each other, that's probably not going to happen anyway. It can happen when you change the position of your feet, which we'll talk about in a second. But essentially what we're looking for is the hips stacked on top of each other. What that will then do, that will essentially create what I call the straight lines. So straight line up through there, and then the straight line down through the body as well. So we've got straight line through the hip, straight line up through the body, straight line down through the legs, the straight lines. So the final part are the feet. Now, obviously, if we're doing a half plank, we've got the knees stacked, so they're in the right position. I've just bent my knee and curled my leg around. That's absolutely fine. What we can then do with the feet, there are a couple of things. So as I've talked about, you can have your feet stacked. Now, having the feet stacked like this can create a little bit more instability and a little bit more of a tendency to change the position of the hips and the shoulders. So what we can do to mitigate that is split the stance. So what we've again got to manage is the rotation of the hip. So not putting the foot too far in front. So what we then do is we can come into this position. Now we have to make sure top foot goes in front of the bottom foot. And then we come up and we're in this position. But what we're not doing is we're not going like that because our foot is so far out. We're still staying, again, keeping all that straight lines all the way through like so. So we can use different foot position. What the different foot position also gives us is a little bit more in the way of stability. So as I mentioned, if your feet are stacked, you can wobble a little bit more because you've just got those 2 points of contact, which is the bottom foot and the elbow. So if you're a little bit more unstable, just split the stance. The final thing that we need to look at is what most people will do with this bottom leg. And all that is they will collapse and go down onto their lower leg. So what that basically would look like would be something like this. Excuse me. So it will be something like this. So you can see my ankle is collapsed, my ankle bone is touching the floor, even some parts of my lower leg is touching the floor. So all we need to do is lift up onto the outside of the foot like so. And then we can do the same, because again, we don't want to be down like that. We want to be up. So we want to keep that lower leg away from the floor. So that is working from the top to the bottom, looking at the teaching points and the common mistakes people make with regards to the position of the head, shoulders, hips, knees and feet. So hopefully this has been useful for you. Hopefully it's given you a better idea of how to perform the plank. Again, if you want to find out more about this, just click the link below. Go through my core mastery workshops, which looks at the side plank plus other exercises, helps you get these techniques right. So when you go into the core training workshop, you've got the techniques mastered, you can get into the workout, you can get the most from it with the right technique so you're not going to injure yourself. So hopefully this has been helpful. Many thanks for watching. My name is Chris from Christopher Hole Training. I'll speak to you in the next tutorial.